Now that you have set up your 4-page InDesign document with the 5-inch square frame on the 4 pages, it's time for you to decide on the quotations or statements you wish to use for this phase of the design, as well as for the second and third phase of the design. In this segment, we'll go over different techniques you may wish to use in order to express and amplify the content of your statements in each design. First, I'm going to take you back to Blackboard to the Expressive Type Design Phase 1 assignment area, and I want to go over some of the examples to show you some of the techniques that have been employed before within this limiting environment, meaning you can only do 12-point type, either Times New Roman or Helvetica, and it's within a 5-inch square, and it's grayscale. So let's take a look. Expressive Type 1. This one is a very simple statement: do a barrel roll. And here the student chose to do a Times New Roman for the first 2 letters down here, and then they did type on a path with Helvetica bold all caps for barrel roll. To amplify it some more, they did a small radial gradient behind the barrel roll. So that's just an example of some of the techniques that can be used for this phase of the assignment. Now going back to the next example, number 3, this student chose to do, as you can see, they took the phrase, "We should all start to live before we get too old." Here they used Helvetica only italicized all caps for live. And for old, they kept it in the Times New Roman all caps, but they lowered the opacity or they tinted the black type. And that's perfectly acceptable as well. This one, they did the statement, give a girl the right pair of shoes and she'll conquer the world. And they chose to do this around a circle. And it was all italicized. This one, similar thing as the first one, where they have tried to emphasize or amplify the content by making dream fade into the white of the background. Finally here, they broke it apart into 2 phrases: "I've been on a calendar, but never on time," and the never on time was set at an angle. And here they maintained the Times New Roman, and the only thing that's different in order to contrast this part with this part is that here they tracked the letters. They spread all the letters apart. Going back further, we're going to go to example 4, and this one shows you the person types the statement up here, and they chose to try to break it apart this way. This one here is one that we'll go over later. The fallen leaves being swept away by the wind, the light watching over the night. This is the one that I am going to have you practice with in order to show you some of the different techniques. This one, the designer chose to do a gradient on the top, the dark at the top going down to the white at the bottom, and they separate with the white type. "I want to confirm this love under this night sky with just the 2 of us." And here you can see the gradient helps to contrast with the white at the top and the black at the bottom. Now let's go one more time. We'll go back to the example number 5. And if you don't like where you are, move. you are not a tree. So here, I want you to notice that the student decided to emphasize the move as the main function, the main most important element in her design, and they separated the letters to evoke that sense of movement. And then the end of the statement is you are not a tree. So I wanted to show you those examples, and now I want you to go back, open up this file you saved in InDesign, and here we have the 5-inch square that you had saved before, and we are on page 1. And what I'd like you to do is type on the top. Now, since this is the first time we're doing this, I want to show you how to go about doing this in InDesign. Take your text tool, the type tool, draw a box above the square, and then type in the following. I'll go close up so you can see. I'll give you a minute to do that. The fallen leaves being swept away by the wind, semicolon, the light watching over the night. So you type that in, and for all of your designs, please type the statements or the quotation, whatever you're going to use for your design, type it above the frame, the 5-inch frame. Now, once you have completed that, I want you to, we have to analyze the statement that you have selected, and you have to decide on, since you're limited to maintaining the 12-point type in a 5x5 square, you need to establish what is the pacing, the priority of the different elements, the different phrases of your statement. Now, in this one, just to give you some practice, we're going to look at it as the fallen leaves being swept away by the wind will be the first part, the light watching over the night, the second part. So, in order to do this with anything, it's important that you clone that statement. You take your selection tool, you click on the statement you just typed, and hold the Option down and drag a clone down here. Now, in order to break it apart to two separate elements, I'm going to clone it again. Option, hold the Option key down, press your left mouse button down and drag down. If you're on a PC, every time I say Option, you're using the Alt key. Now, in the fallen leaves being swept away, the first one, I'm going to double click and get my cursor in and select the second part of the statement and delete it. Now I'm going to go down to the clone that I made, and we're going to select the first part and delete it. So now I have two elements that I'm going to use to compose the design. Now, no matter what you're doing, what techniques you want to do, I'll go out and show you. You want to be able to break up your statements or quotes and move them around and locate them in the space that you are permitted, this 5x5 square. Now, in order to show you some of the things people do, first I'm going to point my mouse and click on it. Now, when you're moving pieces of type around, the container holding the type, you should be in the selection tool. So you click on it, press your mouse down, and I'll drag it, and you can locate this and decide on how it looks on the frame. Now, in here, the fallen leaves being swept away by the wind. Now, let's say I wanted to make that into 2 lines. you can point to the bottom right anchor point until you see the arrowheads, and then make the box smaller so that you now make it into 2 lines. These are things that you can do that will help you in your design. Now, when you're trying to create the design, if you want to see what it looks like without any of the guidelines or the bounding boxes around the type, make sure you're in the selection tool and hit the W. The W shows you the preview of what your design will look like. In this case, I have the fallen leaves being swept away by the wind and the light watching over the night down here. Now I'm going to hit the W again and get back. It's most important that you work with the guidelines and the bounding boxes visible. All right, now, let's try to do some of the techniques that a lot of students use. A lot of students will want to do text on a path. Now, in the design that we saw before, the example with this statement, the student had a curved path and they had this text running along the curve of the path. So I'm going to take this text, I'm going to double click and select the text and do Command or Control C if you're on a PC. So I copy the text. Now I'm going to go up to my pen tool, and we're going to do in this program just like we did when we learned about the tessellation. You're going to create a Bezier curve, and let's do it this way. Click down here, come up here and click and drag to the bottom, to the right, and pull out a curved path like you see here. And then I'm going to come up here and do kind of like a smooth curvy S. And then I'm going to go to my toolbar over here, my tool palette, and go down and notice that there's no stroke. I want to hit black so that I can see the stroke. And now go to the black arrow, the selection tool, click outside. Now, we have already, if you remember, we had selected this and copied it. Now go to the text tool, point to the lower right corner and bring out the Type on a Path tool right there. Now click on this path like so, and you have a blinking cursor at the beginning of the path. Now go Command V, and you now have your type located on that path. Now you can select the type and let's format it. That will go along with our requirement. So I'm going to go up here to my character formatting controls, and I'm going to go down to Times New Roman like so. And it's up to you what you want to do as far as the style. Right now this is regular. Let's just make it bold so you can see that you have that option. If you want to spread the letters apart, you may do so. You can select all of them like this, and tracking them can be done up here, which is up on your character formatting control. This right here indicates, it will tell you, that's the tracking. But the keystroke command is Option right arrow, and it spreads the letters apart along the line. If you have a PC, it's Alt right arrow. Okay, now that takes care of the fallen leaves being swept away by the wind. Right now, if you take the black arrow and click on the path, you can now take out the stroke, make it none. So now you have done the fallen leaves